Dee-dee-dum, la-da-dee-da-dee-dum. Here it... Shh, yourself. You and that little,
I said I'm trying to hear Pittsburgh.
Well, open the window. We're in Pittsburgh.
Wait. I'm getting East Pittsburgh. Radio station KDKA.
The time is 2 years past World War I. In January this year, the United States had begun the noble experiment of prohibition. This spring, Dr. Frank Conrad of the Westinghouse Electric Company had begun a noble experiment of his own. From a transmitter in his barn, he started broadcasting phonograph music and giving baseball scores as a research hobby. Tonight, November 2nd, 1920, Westinghouse has opened the world's first broadcasting station.
Never amount to anything.
The election results are coming in. James M. Cox is losing. Looks like our next president's going to be Warren G. Harding.
He'll never amount to anything either.
Well, 1 out of 2 is not a bad average.
Can't you get something else on that contraption?
There is nothing else.
And there probably never will be.
All right, so it's 1 out of 3.
It's adventure time with Orphan Annie.
Lux presents Hollywood.
This is London.
Once again, it's time for One Man's Family.
You want to buy a duck?
I got a million of them.
This is Milton Cross speaking from New York's famous Metropolitan Opera House.
I am Sherlock Holmes, and I know everything.
I'm asking you who's on first.
Jack Armstrong! Jack Armstrong, the all-American boy. Wave the flag for Hudson High, boys.
You don't have Nixon to kick around anymore.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows.
Kingfish eyes were gusted.
Well, he was known as Silent Cal. I'm known as Steve Allen.
The Good Old Days of Radio with host Steve Allen. The music of Les Brown and his band of renown, and a cast of radio greats. Fred Allen, Gracie Allen, Mel Allen, Eddie Anderson, John J. Anthony, Gene Autry, Bill Baldwin, Red Barber, Jack Benny, Hub Bollinger, Gertrude Burr, Edgar Bergen, Mel Blanc, Major Bow, Don Bradbury, Fanny Bright, Laura Brooks, George Burns, Ken Carpenter, Mary Carver, Milton Charles, Mitzi Christopher, Winston Churchill, Jerry Colonna, Norman Corwin, Charles Farrell, Bing Crosby, Dennis Day, Leedy Forrest, Edward D.H., Ralph Edwards, Ray Erlenborn, Parker Bentley, George Fenneman, Jimmy Fiddler, Kirsten Flagstaff, Kathleen Freeman, Art Gilmore, Benny Goodman, Freeman Gosden, Sandra Gould, Bill Harris, Jerry Hausner, Carl Haverland, Bill Hay, Edwin C. Hill, Jerry Holland, Bob Hope, Ted Husing, Jim Jordan, Francis Langford, Elliot Lewis, Art Linkletter, Vincent Lopez, Barbara Luddy, Ron McNamee, Guillermo Marconi, Groucho Marx, Clem McCarthy, Amy Semple McPherson, Marvin Miller, the Mills Brothers, Agnes Moorehead, Brett Morrison, Kurt Morrison, Ken Murray, Edward Armaro, Wendell Niles, Helen O'Connell, Al Curry, Willie Paul, Will Rogers, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, David Sarnoff, Wayne Savage, Kate Smith, Owen Tulane, Bill Stern, Edward Stone, Ed Dorgerson, Tokyo Road, Arthur Clayton, Lester Lane, Lorraine Tuttle, Rudy Valley, Harry Montiel, Jenna Waldo, Lawrence Welch, Orson Welles, Don Wilson, official, Ed Wynn. And once again, here is my host, Steve Allen.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and that's thine announcer, Bill Baldwin. Hundreds of representatives of the public broadcasting system have gathered in the Century Plaza Hotel in Beverly Hills, California, for their annual membership meeting. And a few of them probably won't remember it, but they all are here. And we are very happy to salute them and to salute a miracle. Thanks to that little old magic box, the world has been reduced to what Marshall McLuhan has aptly called a tribal village. When Abraham Lincoln died in Washington, it was actually a full month before the sad news reached the West Coast. Last year, everyone in the world knew immediately when General Franco died in Spain. In fact, radio was actually announcing his death a week before he died. But then, you recall, a newspaper once did announce that Tom Dewey was elected president before he wasn't.
Mr. Kelsenborn was saying, well, the president is 1 million votes ahead in the popular vote. We have yet to hear from
As Harry Truman was more than the Rich Little of the White House, so radio is a great deal more than a news medium, much more. This 20th century miracle is a magic carpet, a round trip to everywhere. Whether we're talking about an old Philco cathedral, or one of the old Atwater Kents, or this miniaturized portable transistor, radio is a combination concert hall and a newspaper, a theater, a church, a clock, a storm warning, and the world's best babysitter. Radio is Roseland, a sports arena, a rocket to the moon. To sum up, it's the communications aorta of the family of man. And it all began in another century. On April 25th, 1874, in Bologna, Italy, a baby who would fill the world's ears first filled his lungs. His name, Guglielmo Marconi.
He was a delicate, intense youngster, born to a wealthy Italian father and Irish mother. Privately tutored, young Marconi was fascinated with experiments in telegraphy. In March 1899, he sent the first wireless telegraph message a distance of 85 miles across the English Channel. But the dramatic event that captured the public's attention to Marconi's new device was the sinking of a great ocean liner. A young Russian immigrant, David Sarnoff, was on duty at a Marconi Company relay station that fateful afternoon in April 1912 when the faint signal came in, SS Titanic ran into iceberg, sinking fast. Sarnoff alerted all nearby ships, but from the SS Olympic, he learned the Titanic had gone under. Now, for 72 hours, the 21-year-old operator stayed at his post, compiling lists of survivors from the disaster at sea. Finally, exhausted, Sarnoff went home, his name a household word before he was to awake the next day. Marconi's experiments inspired Reginald Fessenden, who in 1900, while working for the U.S. Weather Bureau, transmitted speech for 1 mile. Fessenden designed a frequency alternator General Electric built to get continuous wave transmission. And on Christmas Eve, 1906, Morse code operators on ships at sea were astonished to hear a human voice coming through the air. It was Fessenden Station in Brant Rock, Massachusetts, airing the first radio broadcast in history. Another American inventor, Lee DeForest, had also been trying to send and receive speech. In 1906, his research led to the discovery of the 3-element vacuum tube, the triode. A few years later, Dr. DeForest staged the first opera broadcast with the prestigious Enrico Caruso.
That was in January 1910, from the roof of the Metropolitan Opera House. The microphones were located in the footlights on the stage. I was up in the attic to the roof with a small antenna, and the broadcast spread for a distance of 35 miles. That was the real beginning of radio broadcasting.
By 1914, Dr. John C. Jensen of Nebraska Wesleyan University was broadcasting weather reports to nearby towns and farms. In 1917, the first non-commercial station, 9XM, later known as WHA, began its first of 50 years of broadcasting from the University of Wisconsin. In 1916, Dr. Frank Conrad opened an experimental station which became a regular division of Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company.
This is KDKA in East Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Thus, on November 2nd, 1920, KDKA was born. Its first commercially scheduled broadcast had a listening audience estimated at 500,000 people.
It is now apparent that the Republican ticket of Harding and Coolidge is running well ahead of Cox and Roosevelt. At the present time, Harding has collected more than 16 million votes against some 9 million for the Democrats.
They're playing that new gramophone record, All the Quakers Are Shoulder Shakers, down in Quakertown.
And you thought disc jockeys were something new. It didn't take the infant industry long to realize that it was much more than a toy. On July 2nd, 1921, a microphone was set up ringside at Boyle's 30 Acres in Jersey City. And Major Andrew White broadcast the first heavyweight boxing match, heard by more than 90,000 who watched as Jack Dempsey won by a fourth-round knockout over George Carpentier. Here, Marty Glickman called the finale.
And down goes Carpentier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's up just in time. And Dempsey goes after him, and down he is again. 2, 3.
J. Andrew White was one of the first radio sportscasters, and of course many other great ones followed in his footsteps.
10 and out. And Jack Dempsey remains heavyweight champion of the world.
One of the great ones to follow was Clem McCarthy, a gifted man with a very unique voice. An anxious mother who was said to have warned her child, "Don't sit too close to the radio, son. The announcer sounds like he has a cold."
It is Citation coming to the front. He's everything Miss Teddy was. He's going to win with his ears flicking. It is Citation by 2, pulling away. And the other horse, Poletown, is hanging on gamely. But that's all he can do is hang on gamely to be second. Citation wins this derby.
And the star of them all in his day, Ted Using, watching here as Columbia tries to outpull the midshipmen of Annapolis. The man who doubled in radio and Fox newsreels, Ed Thorgerson, old Thundering Thorg.
200-meter final with Jesse Owens, phenomenal star of the American squad, streaking to a new world record around a turn, and his third Olympic crown. Time 21 and 2/10 seconds.
The Yankees' mighty Mel Allen.
67,000 fans at Municipal Stadium in Cleveland, watching to see if Joe DiMaggio can keep his 56-game hitting streak alive. Jim Bagby on the mound, works the count for 1-1, runner on first base. Here's the pitch. Joe DiMaggio swings and ground ball hit out to short and Lou Goodrow. He flips Jerry Mack for 1 out, 3 late, and drives at first. It's in time for a double play. Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak is stopped.
The voice of Dixie out of Brooklyn's Ebbets Field, Red Barber.
Outfield deep, Brownswood left, the infield overshifted. Here's the pitch. Swung on, belted. It's a long one. Deep in left center. Back for Gianfrido. Back. He makes a one-handed catch against the bullpen. Oh, doctor.
Sports historian Bill Stern.
Now bats Davis. Davis is fading back. A throwing army pass. There's an army pass down to the goal. And intercepted by Notre Dame.
And the man behind the mic is Graham McNamee, announcing the first coast-to-coast Rose Bowl game in 1927. Working with Graham is Carl Haberlin, who is with us tonight.
Happy New Year, everybody. Happy 1922. Yes, friends, from the beautiful boiler room, high atop the Birdseed Hotel, Route 56 meets the old Chisholm Trail, my friends, to form a disaster area. The National Blockbusting Company is sending your way a little New Year's Eve dancing party featuring Les Band and his Brown of Renown. Yes, and this is your announcer, Mike Side. Mike Side suggesting that you roll back the rugs there around the house as Ina Ray and the Melodiers swing and sway now from the stunning new ladies' room of the Ophé Hotel. Yes, sir. Lovely establishment built with a $19 million defaulted loan from the Teamsters Central States Pension Fund, my friend. And to get us all in the right mood now, here's a little family group who drove all the way from Cincinnati in their brand new Essex and may even go further in show business, the Mills Brothers. Yowza.
Where's that tiger? Here's that tiger. Where's that tiger? Here's that tiger. Where's that tiger? Here's that tiger.
Then there was the time William Paley of CBS won a tough negotiation fight for the services of Mr. Harry Lillis Crosby, Jr., and the clincher in the contract was a Paramount film contract.
Where the blue of the night, the gold of the day, and then there's
I'm Ken Carpenter. Thank you. It was my good fortune to spend, over 20 years of being in a variety of variety shows. And this man broke the network dictum that no coast-to-coast show could be recorded. And after that, the era of tape radio was born because of him. And what radio we had in those good old days.
Thank you so very much. Bubbles in the wine, and I figured this type of a night would bring me out here, because I started just a little bit before radio in 1925, and 26 when I heard radio for the first time on one of those earphone radio. And then when I came by Yankton, South Dakota, I run into my first station, WNAX, and we've been going ever since.
The man who went from office boy to president and chairman of the board of RCA, David Sarnoff, saw the entire future of radio in the 20s and helped to shape that future for more than 60 years. Radio Corporation of America took out a newspaper ad in the fall of 1926 to announce the creation of something called the National Broadcasting Company. And on November 15th, NBC made its spectacular debut. 1,000 people assembled in the grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria, and the broadcast featured remote pickups including the orchestra of Vincent Lopez and monologues of Will Rogers. The show lasted 4 hours and cost the then unbelievable sum of $50,000. After it ended, a very impressed Will Rogers, one of its stars, said, "Radio is too big a thing to be out of." In 1928, CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System, was organized under the skilled hands of a 27-year-old tobacco fortunaire named William Paley. In 1934, the Mutual Broadcasting System began. Much later, in 1943, NBC would sell its Blue Network, and ABC, the American Broadcasting Company, would become the fourth network. Vaughn DeLeath became the first woman to sing on the air. The young lady who would dominate the airwaves for a generation was the songbird of the South, Kate Smith.
And as President of the
In 1927, Graham McNamee described for listeners the arrival in Washington of a gangling hero named Charles A. Lindbergh, as President Coolidge decorated the Lone Eagle.
And what he has done upon Colonel Charles A. Lindbergh. As long as I...
The next year, Al Jolson made his radio debut.
My mammy.
Big radio was no longer on the way. It had arrived. Kirsten Flagstad performed Grand Opera from the Met.
And Kirsten wasn't the only one who was bullish on America, because radio attracted artists from Grand Opera to Grand Ole Opry.
Way out on the range that he's a stranger to. Seems he hears the cattle lowing, but it's just a bugle blowing. True blue private buckaroo.
And the star of Melody Ranch is somewhere here with us tonight, Mr. Gene Autry in person. Thank you, Gene.
Thank you for inviting me here tonight. I'm proud to be a part of this great radio industry. I have known many of these performers from the time of Amos and Andy to the present, collectively and individually, and I'm happy that Steve Allen is our host tonight because I've known him 30 years. Steve, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Gene. This isn't in the script, but I've just been reminded by Gene saying that for several years he was my boss, and one day on my show, one of my fellow Christians, and we were talking about our good fortune in the business, he said, "Don't you owe it all to the man upstairs?" I said, "Yes, but in this building, the man upstairs is Gene Autry." But Gene's has a marvelous record. He used to ride the range, and now he owns it, last I heard.
George M. Cohan, the king of Broadway, faced the microphone. Paul Whiteman, the king of jazz, brought his orchestra to radio. Musical comedy stars found time for the airwaves. Eddie Cantor, Fanny Brice, and one original wit who used the medium as none before him ever had, Fred Allen.
Tell me, Mr. Moody, what are your feelings about the radio? I don't hold with it, Bub.
Displeases you?
I don't hold with furniture that talks.
Well, you have a radio.
No, I had one in the hen house.
Yeah?
One day, all the hen's nests would be empty.
Uh-huh.
Next day, every nest would have 2 eggs into it.
You mean?
The hens was listening to Double or Nothing.
Yeah.
Another star who proved that he could be just as funny on the air as he had been for years on Broadway was the wonderful Ed Wynn, the perfect fool. Ed was astonished at one performance to see 4 men seated in a box right near the stage, and all of them, what was odd about it, all of them had their backs to the stage. He was not only astonished, he was understandably furious, so he told an usher to get rid of them. And instead, they came backstage and explained the situation. It seems they were advertising people, and they were interested in hiring Ed for a radio show, and of course, they wanted to see if he was still funny when you didn't look at him. So today, I guess nobody remembers who those ad men were, but everybody does remember the fire chief.
What's this I hear about your pets on the radio? Didn't you hear about it before, Graham? What is it? They're my pet ants. I've got them on the radio. Ants on the radio? They were on Sunday night. They were so cute on the radio, those little ants. Yeah, what they do? Well, I don't know. They got out of breath, you know, and they were panting. Oh, they were panting terribly. Yeah? I turned on the loudspeaker, and I got pants in my ears.
Largely because of such talented people, the medium, as we know, did prosper. And despite whispering campaigns, believe it or not, that the new fad of listening to broadcasting was bad for the ears, and that, according to some experts, electrical storms started fires in homes with radios. So fearlessly, comedians, musicians, dramatists all invaded the airwaves, delighting listeners with a flood of unforgettable series and public events. Radio, it was said in those days, was something for nothing. Yours for the flick of a knob, twist of a dial. But somebody, of course, had to pay for all those actors and the scripts and the music, the producers, the engineers, and the hardware that sent their collective talents into all of our homes. Well, who did pay? The captains of industry, of course. And equally, of course, they encouraged you to spend in subtle ways.
This is Wendell Niles speaking for Pepsodent. The only toothpaste that contains Irium, the exclusive cleansing ingredient that removes the film that makes your teeth look dull.
Ipana toothpaste for the smile of beauty. Sal Hepatica for the smile of health. This is Harry Montel.
Ken Carpenter suggesting that you visit your Philco dealer and try the new sensational 1201 from Philco, famous for quality the world over.
Jell-O, the dessert that comes in those 6 delicious flavors. Strawberry, raspberry, cherry, orange, lemon, and lime. Thank you.
This is Art Gilmore for Chrysler, the leader in automotive luxury. See your Chrysler dealer the first thing tomorrow morning.
George Fenneman reminding you, DeSoto is available in 2 great series. They're really not for sale, you know. The mighty 170 horsepower Fire Dome 8 and the superb Power Master 6. See both these great cars at your DeSoto Plymouth dealer tomorrow. Remember, DeSoto puts you ahead automatically.
I didn't know this particular crowd liked commercials that much. But it really is great to hear all those wonderful voices and see those great faces. From Anison to Zymol Troches, the sponsors, bless their checkbooks, were not the only ones who found radio rewarding. As you've seen, so did many other spokesmen who went from reading commercials to seeing their own names in lights. Don Amici, the announcer who became one of radio's most versatile actors, the star of that great old First Nighter program from the Little Theater off Times Square. And Don was followed in that role by
Les Tremaine.
Les Tremaine.
When Amici left, I took over for 7 years, and I was followed by
Olin Soule. I guess nobody could follow me because 10 years later, the show